Good Morning Matcha. No, that's not it. Welcome back to Sunday Morning Matcha. If you guys are new, my name is Brandon, and this is Sunday Morning Matcha, where we sip matcha and talk about Jesus. I drop new episodes every Sunday morning, and I got a banger for you guys today, so let's get into it. I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but I just absolutely love that God has a sense of humor. I firmly believe that God has a massive sense of humor. And a lot of things have just happened in my life where, I gotta stop for a minute, realize a prayer just got answered, though not in the way I was expecting, and sometimes I just start laughing. And I don't know if he does that too. I don't think he may answer every prayer in a humorous way, but sometimes, man, it's just comical. And so I like to believe God has a sense of humor. And I think he shows it a lot more than we may realize. And so this is what I want to talk about this week. Does God actually have a sense of humor? And did Jesus ever laugh? So I did a lot of research into this. And frankly, it's really interesting to me. Like if you're around me enough, I always say, I firmly believe God has a sense of humor. And he loves to show it. So first I want to dive into a little bit of just what laughter is. And after researching it, I have found that laughter has a lot of practical health benefits, including releasing tension, lowering anxiety, boosting your immune system, apparently. It's just absolutely crazy how many health benefits laughing has. And there's a lot of health benefits to it, sure, but the emotion of happiness, of joy, and then the act of laughing, it's very social. Laughter is really, when you get down to it, it's a form of communication to others. It can express words that you just sometimes might not be able to say. It speaks more volumes. And a lot of people will say, well, I laugh by myself. But here's the thing. Even at night, when you're just sitting there scrolling TikTok or Instagram Reels or whatever you like to scroll, and you find something funny, guess what? The first instinct to me is, I want to share this with someone else, right? And we're so blessed to have this great social emotion, and we get it from a great social God. So, does God have a sense of humor? Well, yes. I really do believe so. And when we stop and remember that God's ultimate purpose is joy, and in his sovereign wisdom, he reveals things that set the bar low and force us to approach him like we're children. Right? He chooses the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. And so he wants us to come to him like we're children. And so therefore, I believe he has this playful, humorous aspect that not a lot of people talk about. And then when we stop and look at the world around us, creation, man, some animals, let me tell you something. You ever seen a platypus? What in the world was going through God's mind? I mean, he was messing around, like surely, right? He was just having a laugh. He was like, you know what? That would just be funny as crap. I mean, look at this thing, right? And there's just so many animals that I'm like, No way God was 100% serious in making this thing. You know? But here's the crazy part. Even animals exhibit playful behavior. Many creatures understand this notion of play. And that's just so fascinating because it has no inherent purpose other than to produce this joy and entertainment. And therefore this shows us that God's Spirit is playful. And that play was so incredibly important to include in creation, to include in reality, and therefore we as humans obviously have a sense of play and humor. And if we are truthfully made in the image of God, then God definitely has some form of a sense of humor. And one of my favorite verses that I believe shows God's sense of humor is 1 Samuel chapter 5. And boy, do I love this. So to give you a quick summary, here's what's going on. So Israel and the Philistines went to war, and the Philistines ended up defeating Israel. And so there's this thing called the Ark of the Covenant. It's this chest that housed the 10 Commandments, and they were written on 2 stone tablets. These stone tablets were given to Moses from God. Okay? And these tablets are in this chest. And the Philistines, after defeating Israel, took the chest. They took the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Philistines don't worship the one true God. They don't worship the God of the Bible, right? So they worship all these false gods, and so they have these temples built to them. So the Philistines take the Ark of the Covenant, and they bring it into the temple of this false god named Dagon. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And they put the Ark in this temple in front of the statue named Dagon. Now, I want to think it's like a stone statue. You know, it's some altar, I'm assuming, and it's got, you know, a little statue of them. And what happens is when they put it down, they go to sleep and come back. The statue of their false god has fallen over in front of the Ark, face down. And then they pick it back up. And then the next day they come back, and the statue has fallen again. And the head and both hands of the statue are broken off. So I believe just like the torso was left. Now, why this is so humorous to me, and I really think this shows God's sense of humor, is I don't know why, but I picture the statue like the size of an action figure, and it's just sitting on this little ledge, and in the middle of the night, God's just laughing, and he just like flicks it over, and they come in, they're like, oh dang, how'd that happen? You know, and then they pick it back up, and then they go to sleep, come back, and it's God flicks it over again. And I just feel like he's sitting over there laughing his tail off. You know? But I personally believe God was laughing this entire time. Just knocking that statue over again and again. And but in the Old Testament, we actually do get a few verses that say plainly that God laughs. And I'm going to warn you, it's not in the way you think. So we get to Psalm 2, and it says, he who sits in heaven shall laugh. The Lord shall hold them in derision. I think that's how I say that, derision. So he who sits in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall hold them in derision. Cool, God laughs. Case closed. Nah. So the nature of this laugh is a lot different from, say, a joyous one that we usually associate with laughter. And this is coming from more of like like a mocking, like, really? Y'all think you're better than me? I'm God. You know, God doesn't get afraid of the opposition of man. And here we see that he actually laughs at it. And a commentary that I read puts it like this: God laughs because he sits in the heavens. He sits as the great king on a glorious throne. He isn't pacing back and forth, wondering what to do. God just sits in perfect peace. It isn't this earthly throne he occupies, it's the throne of heaven. And this throne has authority over all creation. So what in the world does he have to fear from earth? I mean, nothing. He just simply laughs at the opposition from man. And as Christians, we should be comforted by God's laughter here. Because it's the laughter of might, of authority. It's righteousness and holiness. It's the laughter of strength. And we can have so much rest in knowing that our God is the one true God who is truly above all, who truly holds this authority. Nothing can stand in his way. Nothing is greater than he. I do believe also that God's humor is not like the world's humor. The world's humor most of the time is cruel and unkind. And I would say 80% of the time. All these things that God just does not like. What we sinful creatures perceive as funny, this holy God does not. But if God has a sense of humor and laughs, then of course Jesus does too, by default, right? So if we move to the New Testament, unfortunately, if you try to find it, there's not a single verse telling us that Jesus laughed. We have verses where Jesus displayed love, joy, grief, some anger, and other emotions, but we never see laughing. And honestly, I really do find that interesting. But keep in mind, though, that Jesus was also human. And to be human means to have our emotions. And guess what? Laughing is definitely included in that. Now, there's 3 passages I want to look at here where listen, I firmly believe 100% that Jesus was laughing during these. Okay. Number 1, the wedding at Cana, I believe is how you pronounce it. So we go to John chapter 2, and this tells us that Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding, right? Jesus is at a wedding, this joyous, happy, uplifting event. You know, marriage is very serious to God. And he's thrilled, and it just fills him with joy. How is Jesus not laughing at a wedding? You know, I imagine him, you know, just sitting at a table filled with other people, just cracking jokes, laughing. I just refuse to believe that he was sitting there so serious the entire time. Number 2, Jesus calling Nathanael to be a disciple. So we go to the end of end of chapter 1 in John. And Jesus is calling Philip and Nathanael to be a disciple. And Nathanael essentially says to him, "How do you know me?" And Jesus responds, "Before Philip called you, when you were under a fig tree, I saw you." And Nathanael essentially responds, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God." And Jesus goes, "You believe because I saw you under a fig tree?" And now, this could be just my interpretation of it. This just seems like a very humorous response to Jesus, or from Jesus. I feel like he just chuckles and says, "Really? Because I said I saw you under this tree, like, that's all it took?" I don't know. To me, I feel like Jesus was having a little bit of a laugh there. Or it was somewhat comical to me, I don't know. And then number 3, we go to Mark 9:21 through 23. And Jesus, this is the passage where Jesus is healing, he heals a boy with a demon. And the father essentially begs Jesus to do anything he can. And Jesus is like, really? If you can. Anything is possible for one who believes. Now, imagine the laugh God is having. Someone goes up to him and says, if you can do anything. Really? Like, how ironic is that? Because the amount of people who just didn't understand who Jesus was. God in the flesh among them. And I see this passage as Jesus laughing and saying, are you really? You're kidding me, right? Of course I can. Like, I'm God. So I see him having a little chuckle there. But laughter is just such an important role in our lives. I mean, some of the best memories we have come from it, right? So what does it mean? What does it mean for us? How can we use laughter, joy, and this happiness for the glory of God, right? Because that's the ultimate goal, is to glorify God. Nothing else matters except lifting up his name and glorifying him through all of our actions. And that's the ultimate question. And I would say we are just not to be afraid. We are to conquer fear. Because our God has overcome our troubles, and he gets to laugh at the wickedness of the world. And in Matthew, the book of Matthew, Jesus walks, the passage where Jesus is, walking on water. I don't know if y'all have heard of that one before. It's pretty popular passage. If you notice, he's not running. Jesus just walks over the water, over these waters that were troubling the disciples. He doesn't run. He isn't panicking. He isn't scared. But instead, he just walks. And I believe we are to just laugh and be joyous, even in the hardest times. Because this communicates to others our confidence in God to handle our troubles, our hard times. Could you imagine going through something just so painful and, man, this just sucks, and you're just smiling and laughing through it, and people are just so confused at how you're doing it, and that your confidence in our God, the one true God, your confidence is that high. This is how we glorify God. We stay content, we stay peaceful, we stay confident in the times that are tough. And through that, we're able to bring joy to others, since we know that God is with us and watching over us. But I saw a Reddit post, and I found it, and it was posted about 2 years ago. And it brings up a very interesting point. And the user writes, I'm going to kind of paraphrase here, but he goes, I once heard a pastor say in a sermon that, of course, God has a sense of humor, since we do, and we're created in his image. And so it got me thinking, while it's logical, humans find something humorous when it is unexpected, the only reason a joke is funny is if you don't see the punchline coming. Since God is all-knowing, he knows every joke premise and every punchline in existence. Therefore, would he find anything funny? And so this is the main point I want to talk about from this post. Because when he says, the only real reason a joke is funny is if you don't see the punchline coming. Obviously, God is all-knowing. He knows the punchline. But the problem lies in the fact that we don't always just laugh at jokes. We may find an art piece funny, an animal funny, like the platypus, We can laugh in nervous situations, or even just casually during conversation. You know, you meet someone new and you're just, you're kind of chuckling, just striking up a good old conversation. And therefore we can laugh at just multiple things other than just jokes. And the fact that we're made in the image of God means that we've been created with God's own emotions. Like, God loves us so much. We're made in his image. You know, we're his children. And unfortunately, we decided to tell God to kick rocks. And I don't think God was laughing at that. You know? God sent his son in the world to pay for our sins. And whoever shall believe in him shall not perish but have eternal life. All the evil in the world, it's not God. It's our actions. It's the product of our free will. It's the product of us telling God to kick rocks. And so I urge you, if you have not placed your faith in Jesus, do so. The world will let you down, and I know you have tried. There's a lot the world tries to offer because I was there. I tried to eat everything the world offered me, and it did not fill me up. It would momentarily, but it's not sustainable. There's a reason you keep failing. Because you're not meant to do it on your own. God is the only one who can sustain you. So again, place your faith in Jesus. I promise you, it'll be the best thing you've ever done. Thank you guys so much for listening. Again, you truly mean the absolute world to me. If you guys don't mind following the podcast and then checking out my socials, I would just absolutely love that. Remember to serve, pray, and love God, and I'll see y'all in the next one.